Hello and welcome to the Seahawkers podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Schultz, and I am joined today by a good buddy of mine, EJ Snyder at Football EJ out on X. And he is the co-host of Bootleg Football with Brett Coleman. You know him. He's been here before. We're here to talk about and recap the Seahawks draft. How you doing, EJ?
I'm good. I'm recovering. It is the time to start is it tapering when you're training, right? You need to taper towards actually being a normal human being again and not being in draft mode 24/7.
I don't know anything about that. That's we might need to do a show on that just so I can learn.
Yeah, we'll see. I'll see if I can figure it out first and then I'll share.
So the Seahawks, they go into the draft with 10 picks. They come out with 11. EJ, overall, I'm kind of curious just to get your overall idea of the Seahawks draft, because I look at the draft grades. I don't know what to think about them necessarily, especially when I see Mel Kiper giving us an A. Like, I don't know how to compute that in my brain. It just doesn't make sense. What's kind of your overall take on the Seahawks class this year?
Well, I like it a lot. I've done 3 wrap-up pods already and a radio interview today. So I've already talked about the Seahawks draft class quite a bit. And generally, I think it's one of the top classes in the NFL. You can argue, depending on your criteria, right? There's a lot of ways to grade draft classes in this moment, which is the initial reaction, which is how much we like the players, whether or not we see the fit, the plan, the value. Lots of different factors go into different people's draft grades. Overall, it's hard for me to look at their draft and not say that it's easily in the top 6 or 7 within the NFL because of the amount of players, quality players that they got pretty much all the way down the board, the fit that I can already see based on not only what they did last year, but what they say they want to do going forward. And then you look at the UDFA class, which I roll in, which is just free talent, and they were pretty strong there as well. So it's difficult if you don't have the Seahawks rated in the top 10, in the top third of the NFL. I kind of need to know why.
I guess if there were any kind of criticism that would go into that grading scale, it might be balance, EJ, because I look at the offense and the defense, and there's 2 guys on defense, including one guy who's probably not going to even play on the team in 2025 because he's coming off of an ACL injury. And then the rest of them are on offense.
Yeah. And that's, I think, where the UDFA balance comes in, because their top 2 UDFAs are both defenders, and I think they both have a chance to make the team. So if you look at it that way, you've got, 3 defenders of a higher quality. And we're going to talk a lot about quality tonight because obviously the Seahawks had issues on the offensive line last year. And some people might say, well, they only picked, outside of Mason Richmond down in the 7th, they only picked like 2 offensive linemen. Yeah, but they picked 2 really good ones. So, quality over quantity, it doesn't necessarily fix their issues, but it goes a long way toward it. If you're picking guys that are, let's say, a starting caliber, I think it's a lot different than taking a shotgun approach from the 4th round on down and picking 3 or 4 guys, hoping one might develop. I mean, those are 2 very different things. One is just numbers. One is, hey, you got a couple of gems here that are probably going to play, I would say, significant snaps for you sooner rather than later.
We've got Dana O'Gorman in the chat saying, hello, gentlemen. Hello, all. Dana has been on. I know you've talked to Dana, so it's cool to have you here, Dana. Appreciate it. And before we get to reviewing the rest of the draft class, I want to thank our sponsor, Body Spec. If you're ready to start your fitness journey, whether you're an athlete, a fitness enthusiast, or getting back into shape, Body Spec has you covered. For less than the price of a haircut, you can access DEXA scans, the world's most accurate body composition scan. You want to truly understand what's going on with that body of yours? Well, right now we're offering an exclusive $10 discount on single scans. Use the code SHP at checkout. Give it as a gift to a family member or a great gift for yourself. It costs well under $100. And Body Spec DEXA scans focuses on the numbers that actually matter. Your body composition, bone density, and overall health metrics. It's a powerful way to take charge of your well-being without the need for insurance or complicated procedures. The best part, While Body Specs competitors charge $150 or more for a single scan, you get this experience for way less than $100. Hit that QR code you see on the screen or go to bodyspec.com/C-Hawkers and use the code SHP for your special Flockers discount. EJ, talking about this draft class, why don't we start with the defense? Because there's fewer players, as we established.
Yep.
They went there early with the pick of Nick Emanwari, the safety out of South Carolina, a guy that they traded up to go get on day 2, and a guy who they were strongly considering. And I believe this too because, gosh, we saw so many mock drafts for the Seahawks, and it was if Gray Zabel wasn't mocked to the Seahawks, it was Nick Emanwari of South Carolina. Now they go out and they say, well, how about we just get both?
I mean, if you can, good work if you can get it, right? 2 very solid players at the top of the draft, but Nick Emanwari is a really interesting fit with the Seahawks because of what Mike Mack has experience with calling on defense. And really, this is the Hamilton pick. I mean, if you're talking about the Ravens defense that he came from, and Kyle Hamilton took a little while to get going. His first season was not tremendous. His second season was amazing. And you really figured out, or they really figured out how to use him in that defense and turn him loose. And Nick Emanwari is a better athlete by far than Kyle Hamilton. That's not even really close. Hamilton's a good athlete. Nick Emanwari is an alien level athlete. I was standing right next to him at the combine when he did his vertical jump, well over 40 inches. And you're just like, okay, somebody 220 shouldn't
like that. That shouldn't happen.
You should not be able to just keep going up like that. But
and then begin at some point.
Right, it should. And you go back out and run a 4.3 and all the agility testing as well. He's a very versatile chess piece, and they've already said they're going to play him in slot or play him at nickel, and that's just going to get him around the ball and make him an agent of chaos. I think he's a better safety than a lot of people give him credit for. Yes, there is some inconsistency in his game, and when you get drafted in the first round, there's going to be a microscope on that stuff. But the way you listen to it sounds like a lot of people think he's some kind of raw ball of clay project that didn't play in the SEC, didn't have a lot of really good coverage reps. He knows how to play football. His tackling's got to get a little bit better, and there are definitely coverage lapses or breaks where he, drops his role in the defense. But it's not that he can't do or doesn't understand what he should do in a defense. He does and can, and it's going to take a little while to get integrated into Mike Mack's defense, but all those physical gifts aren't going away, and you can't teach those. So very interesting piece for Mike Mack going forward, and I think they're going to use the heck out of him. I think he's going to get so many snaps in their defense as soon as they can count on him not to have breakdowns. So he'll probably be a little bit of a package player to start because, again, the secondary wasn't really hurting for talent, but as much as he's willing to chew, they're going to feed him.
Well, and I think that jives too with, I think, what we heard from Coach McDonald in the press conference too. Sounded like he would be kind of a nickel package guy, and then they would try and work him in based on that, which, considering when you have Julian Love, when you got Kobe Bryant, who's really been an up-and-comer, he's going into his last year of his deal, though, so you would hope that with that full year, maybe maybe you end up keeping Kobe Bryant and you just play a lot of 3 safety packages with those guys.
It's a very popular defense set, and it gives them a lot of chances. It gives them a lot of options to exercise that, use that, roll him in, really to highlight his strengths and maybe hide his weaknesses early on while they're working on those in practice. And then, again, as soon as he gets comfy, he is going to have a lion's share of the snap in the defense. And, again, that might be a full season. I think that's okay given where the Seahawks are, because if he comes on at all like Kyle Hamilton did in year 2, like gangbusters, is a great pick for the Hawks.
Well, one guy we hope comes on in year 2, because with his ACL injury at Notre Dame in the playoffs against Indiana, it sounds like he may not make it back in time for the season. But with the 142nd pick overall in round 5, Riley Mills, the defensive tackle out of Notre Dame. One of the things Coach McDonald said in this press conference, EJ, is that Nadin Dirty would have probably not shown up for work if he did not pick Riley Mills in the 5th round.
I'm fascinated by that because Dirta is a coach that I've sort of chronicled his route to and through the NFL on our summer preview series. I think he's one of the most fascinating figures in the NFL. And I really want to know like why he felt that strongly about Riley Mills. I like Riley Mills as a football player. I don't love him. I certainly am not showing up to work on Monday morning if you don't pick him for my football team. He is a good pass rusher. He is not great against the run. And he just has stretches where his impact kind of disappears, which is commensurate with guys getting picked in the 4th round. I get it. But he just didn't strike me. And again, I know a lot less about football than Coach Dirta does. As a like stir the drink kind of a guy that I would be pounding the table for and saying, hey, I really see it with this player. He obviously did. Like you said, might be a while until we see him on the field. That's always difficult, just from a statistical, historical perspective. Guys that miss their first year, the majority of their first year or all of their first year, have a much lower chance of hitting. You would think that they'd be getting all the mental reps and that would be a real benefit. They'd come in and they'd understand it. But those guys tend to hit at a low rate. Doesn't mean they don't hit. There's certainly cases of guys that, took a redshirt year as their first year, had an unfortunate timed injury, either in training or a bowl game or something like that, like this case, and did come back to have a successful career. But there are also a lot of guys that just never hit the level that a lot of people saw for them.
Yeah, and I guess the 5th round is kind of that spot where injury guys tend to fall, especially if they have a lot of talent. I'm kind of happier though that they took a guy coming off of an ACL injury versus a guy who, a lot of times you'll see guys with degenerative issues or questions around those types of things fall into the 5th round. It's like, well, the amount of time you have that is limited. And ACL, those guys like that recover from an injury like that. People recover from that all the time.
Yeah, ACLs are a very different thing now than they were 10 years ago or certainly 20 years ago. And it is amazing how much we go, oh, it's just an ACL, right? What used to be a devastating sort of career shortening injury is not that big of a deal now. And people tend to worry more about things like degenerative conditions with cartilage or bone damage. I mean, all that stuff sounds terrible. Nothing in the medical files of NFL players sounds great, but the focus has shifted to things where it might limit the overall career time. And ACL and MCL are no longer in that category. Easy for me to say. When a guy does all the ligaments in the knee, the MCL, the PCL, and the ACL, then folks go, oh, hey, that's a
too many
injury. That's too many CLs. We need less CLs. And guys do come back from that as well. But when it's quote unquote, and I hate saying this because I know what the rehab's like, just an ACL, it's a lot of work, but it has become a very commonplace procedure. And yes, guys come back at full strength pretty much all the time from ACL. So I hate to say we dismiss it, but we dismiss it.
I think we started dismissing it after Adrian Peterson came back from his and then won a rushing title. So we have him to thank, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess he's superhuman.
That's true. So maybe we shouldn't set our expectations that high. But that's why I'm giving Riley Mills a season to recover too, because he also hurt his late in the season. But we've got 3 offensive linemen, EJ, to add to this Seahawks offensive line. They went there early. I mentioned his name before, Gray Zabel. We'll get to the other guys, but the guard out of North Dakota State, a guy that at the Senior Bowl, he kind of came into the limelight, I guess you would say, at the Senior Bowl, and apparently from John Schneider's remarks, that's where he first hit John Schneider's radar, which was almost a little bit of a yellow flag to me, like, you've got a dude from North Dakota State on your roster. Did he not hit your radar? Like, I don't know, watching that tape?
Yeah, I mean, banging the drum, but a lot of times guys that are going to be converted from one position to another, and that's Gray Zabel. He played tackle exclusively at North Dakota State, but he doesn't have the arm length to play in the NFL consistently. However, everything else about Gray Zabel is pretty darn awesome. And I do mean everything. From a physical standpoint, his movement is incredibly smooth. He's very powerful. He's nasty. You see him finish on tape all the time, and he enjoys it. He gets into that sort of thing, which offensive line coaches want their offensive linemen to do that, right? They want guys who will finish plays, and he will finish plays. The question always with conversion is like, hey, if he hasn't done it, can he do the things like snap and call the defense? Well, he doesn't necessarily have to call the defense. He's got veterans in that offense, or call the line protections the offense. He doesn't have to do that. He's got veterans around him that could do that for him in the first season, and he can definitely snap. I watched him snap at the combine, and I was like, hey, I don't really have any questions after this. He moves so well. You'd think he'd been doing it probably since high school, and he might have done it in high school, but he hasn't done it throughout all of his college career. Again, very experienced lineman, 2,776 snaps or something in college. He's played a lot of football. So, and he's just wired for it, right? You talk to some guys and you're like, they just have the attitude, they have the approach. He's just lineman through and through. I think he's going to be a long-time starter for the Seahawks.
I'm just happy, EJ, that John Schneider broke a trend.
I know he finally did it. He finally did it, right? We didn't think he would.
John Schneider than it is Gray Zabel to me in some respects.
100%. This was, like you said, if it wasn't Gray Zabel being mocked, it was Nicky Manwari. And I think a lot of people thought maybe it's even some phantom third player where John Schneider's just going to go off script again and do something crazy. We all said, people asked me, as I live here in the Northwest, who do you think the Seahawks are going to take? I was like, well, I'll tell you who I would take, but I don't know. I don't talk to John and he does whatever he wants. I said, I would take Gray Zabel, right? If he's there, and they'll be lucky if he is, it would be a great pick. It would line up with their needs. I think he's a longtime starter, blah, 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 right? But in no way did I think when we got to the Hawks pick that John Schneider was actually going to do it. And he did. And it's awesome.
Yes, it was very cool. And then I think that allowed him a little bit of grace. Like I would have liked to see maybe another offensive lineman taken with maybe the top 5 or 6 picks, but he does wait until round 6 and he takes the Kansas guard, Bryce Cabledew. I saw him at Shrine Bowl and I still can't remember how to say his name, partly because he did not particularly stand out for me among some of the Shrine Bowl candidates. I'm curious how you felt about him, EJ.
This is a numbers pick, I think, for them. And again, they're assessing skills that he's got, and he's under that magic shuttle number, right? His short shuttle is guys with short shuttles in the range where he ran it start like 85% of their games in the NFL. It's a crazy number. There are very few numbers that are that indicative of success at any position. He fits there, but more importantly than that, about a week before the draft, I reached out to my buddy Brandon Thorne, who does some of the best offensive line work in terms of scouting. I think he said he watched 73 guys between tackles and interior offensive line this year, which is bananas. That's almost 3 times as many as I watched. And I said, hey, are there any late round guys that really stick out for you? I said, tackle or guard, doesn't really matter. Because I don't get 25 guards deep. I don't have the time. And Cabledew was one of the guys on his list. And I was like, huh. And then sure enough, again, they wait. And like you said, great start, a little bit of a grace period starting off with Zabel, but everybody's like, we need more than one, John. Come on. And then when I saw his name come up, I was like, okay, tested really well. Brandon likes his approach. Again, I trust Brandon's eyes almost implicitly with offensive linemen. Sure, he can be wrong, but he's right way more than he's wrong. And I thought, okay, sneaky. They went out and got the other positions they wanted. They had an idea that they could go get him. They knew they weren't going to be racing anybody to the podium for him. I saw some good stuff on his tape because I was looking at the tackle from Kansas, Logan Brown. I really liked what Logan Brown did. I like what a lot of other tight ends did. They opened some huge holes for Devin Neal, the running back at Kansas. It was a really good run blocking operation at Kansas, and he was part of that, right? So again, as far as working in a 5 for offensive line, I think he's got the ability to do that. And I think this is one of the sneakier picks. Like, I have a feeling Bryce has the ability to stick. and be a contributor. Whether swing guards are just as valuable in a 17-game season. Like, guys are going to get hurt. And I mean, Ben Johnson, the new coach of my team, Chicago Bears, came out and said, hey, it's not your best 5. It's your best 8 or 9. Like, you can't just have 5. If you have 5, you're not set. You need 8 or 9. And I think he could end up working his way into that best 8 or 9. And that would be a huge boon for a 6th-round pick.
Oh, well, and I said the same thing about, as we judge success, Stone Forsythe was a guy that the Seahawks picked in the 6th round, and he played out his entire rookie contract with Seattle before moving on. Like, that's that's a hit in the draft to me.
Yes, absolutely. If you're getting a guy that contributes, I don't care if it's on special teams in the 6th round. If that guy sticks and plays and he makes it onto your 53, you hit with that guy. I know that everybody wants stars at every position at every pick. That's not the way that it works. And if you get a guy that can take meaningful snaps for you in the trenches and do his job, not be the weakest link in the 5, and you get that guy in the 6th because not everybody paid attention to him, or, he didn't have the flashiest draft cycle. That's what good front offices do. Like, that is how you stretch your, let's call them draft dollars, and really make an impact.
Well, closing out the offensive line, they closed it out in the draft with, not the very last pick, but second to last pick in round 7 with tackle Mason Richmond from Iowa. And speaking of the departed Stone Forsythe, I think that's kind of the idea with Mason Richmond, would be to have him come in and perhaps be that swing tackle that they lost with Stone.
It'll be interesting to see. Mason Richmond didn't stand out to me. Nobody mentioned his name to me. I ended up watching quite a bit of the offensive line from Iowa because I was very interested in their running back, Caleb Johnson. But their line wasn't as good as it has been in past years, considering how much Iowa runs the ball and how much they're known for being a run blocking school. I wasn't as impressed with their overall line this year. That's not a shot on Mason Richmond, because, again, I didn't do an individual study on him. But look, you're in the 7th round. You're throwing darts. If you get any kind of hit, I don't care if he sticks on the practice squad and you can call him up when you need him. That's a hit in the 7th round. Absolutely. So I'm not gonna sit here and say, oh yeah, I studied Mason and I have, I'm sure Brandon did. I'm sure he's got pages of notes on him. I don't. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I do. But again, if you hit on any kind of offensive line help in the 6th or 7th round that actually sticks and plays meaningful downs for you anytime in their rookie contract, you did great.
All right. Well, continue on offense, going to quarterback, EJ. The Seahawks in a draft, one of the stories of the draft was how far Shedeur Sanders fell. This was a guy that ended up being drafted ahead of him, Jalen Milroe of Alabama. It was kind of funny, EJ. We had Earl Thomas on day 1 during our day 1 coverage, and I asked him, a Texas guy, and I was speaking primarily of, a Texas Longhorn maybe, and he turned that and he said, there's a Texas guy I want, but he's from Texas, and it's Jalen Milroe.
Right. Yeah, guys from Texas stick together. I've learned that, and I don't think Earl's wrong in terms of it was not a particularly strong quarterback draft outside of Cam Ward, who I believe is going to be a good starter and can eventually be a weapon in this league. Outside of that, it was a lot of, okay, what other flavor do you want, or what lottery ticket are you going to pick up? And Milroe is the ultimate lottery ticket in this draft, and I don't just mean for quarterback. It is because he is a quarterback, and quarterback is the most expensive position and the most pivotal position in the NFL. And if they hit on Milroe, if they can develop his ability to be consistent and play on time at the NFL level, this draft is a success. I don't care who else they drafted. And I mean everybody, all the guys we've talked about that I like, they could all bomb out. If Milroe hits and becomes a mid to high level starter in the NFL, you won. Like, you flat out won, because he's already elite with his legs. And it's not, again, it's kind of like Nicky Manwari. People talk about it like he can't throw a football. He absolutely can throw a football. And when everything comes together, when his mechanics hit and the vision's there, he is a pretty high level passer. But the problem is it doesn't happen all the time. and his mechanics break down and he starts spraying the ball all over the field and he misses easy things that move the chains that he can hit, which is frustrating because you just saw him, thread the needle on a 25-yard shot across the middle and it was beautiful. And you're like, just do that every time. But he doesn't. And he doesn't enough that was my concern. I basically said he's got to go somewhere where he can sit and get his mechanics straight. And if he does, you've got everything else. You've got an absolute A+ young man from everybody that talked to him. You've got a leader. You've got a guy that is committed to working. You got a guy that can change the game with his legs. One of the best runners in this draft. And I don't mean runners at the quarterback position. I mean one of the most electric rushers of the football who can change the game from like 60 yards out on one play. That is not something you can teach. And you've got all that. And you got all the tools, and they just have to, again, he doesn't have to start. Darnold's here. Just about the time the guaranteed money in Darnold's contract runs out, you're going to basically figure out what you've got with Milroe. And again, if you hit, you are set up for the next 7-8 years with a starting quarterback who is a high-level weapon at that point. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm saying if it does, you're 100% set. So that's why he got picked.
Well, and it sounds too like he's already putting in some work with Jordan Palmer. So if you have a guy like that who's already trying to work with one of the QB gurus, and that's a nice little sign too.
You know what I want him to do more than anything else? I want him to get on the VR headset that Jalen Daniels used.
Oh,
because Daniel said that was one of the things that was a tremendous boost to his development, was all the hundreds and thousands of reps that he took on VR, because they have a very advanced VR headset that basically you can dial up anything you want to and see the look, and it's virtual reality.
Receptions like you did against Oklahoma and Tennessee.
Yeah, so you can get hundreds of mental reps and then work the physical into that and start to process at a speed that's commensurate with the NFL. And the other thing you can do with those VR headsets, which is really fascinating, is basically turn the speed up to like the NFL plus 10%. So everything happens even faster. It's like putting a weight on your bat and then swinging it. And then when you get out there and it, quote unquote, the game slows down, you've been doing it at 10% faster speed. And so it seems more normal, and you're anticipating, hopefully, with your eyes a little bit earlier. And Daniel said that was one of the things that helped him make the jump. And of course, we saw what happened once he did that.
Yeah, if you're a podcast listener, just think about what it's like listening at 2x and then going back to 1x. It's
Correct.
What do you think about the idea, though, with Milroe and getting some packages into the offense so he can get involved even as soon as year one?
I don't think so. And Mike Mack shut that down pretty hard. He said, no, 100% quarterback. So could you do something in the red zone?
100% quarterback. I'm still thinking of him doing quarterback in a package type role.
I mean, I'm sure he'd love that. Every player wants to help the team and be on the field and score touchdowns. Like that's the thing. But I think it would have to be, or will have to be, if they do it, very specific, right? Where you're going to, again, put him out there, and the chances that his current strengths, which are a bunch, outshine his weaknesses are good, because, again, young passers in the NFL, you don't want to put them out there and get them smashed, right? Whether that's mentally or physically, mentally especially. And it's going to be very easy for people to heap on him if it's not successful. So you're going to have to balance that, pro and con, gain and loss, and figure out whether or not that's worth it to you. He's got a lot of strengths. Like, I think you could certainly design some packages that leverage those. But I think you have to do it carefully, not sort of willy-nilly, just because, like, oh, he's fast, we'll just put him out there and, see if he can get the edge. Like, I don't really want that for him.
We talked about speed with Milroe. We talked about player speed with Emanwari. Gray Zabel in relation to guard and offensive lineman speed. Also, they got some speed at the tight end spot with Elijah Arroyo of Miami. But as we also talked about injuries with some of these other players, that's the case with Elijah Arroyo.
That's the reason they got him. They are comfy with his knees, and not everybody was. But they are. Like, they have the same information. Their doctors looked him over, did combine rechecks and all that stuff, and they're comfy with it. They're ready to go. And one of the best receiving tight ends in this draft, the best, I think, pure seam ripper of a weapon at tight end in this class, did a ton of that at Miami. Has very sure-handed, fluid after the catch. I like everything about Elijah Roy on the pass game, and he's got some blocking to him too. It's not that he can't block, but the big question mark with him was knees. And this is one of the weird things about the combine. Right after they worked out, I left the stadium floor and met up with a friend of mine, went to a, local place to get something to eat. And we're sitting in the waiting room, and who comes in but Elijah Arroyo, his mom, his girlfriend sits down, and they're right in line for us, after a table. And I'm just sitting there across the waiting room, and I'm like, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to ask. I'm just going to be cool about this and whatever.
You weren't going to scout his knees while you were there?
I was not going to scout his knees in the lobby of a local watering hole in Indy, but no, good size, great speed, really good hands, super fluid. Obviously was Cam Ward's tight end at Miami this year, and will bring an element that I'm not really sure. I mean, Noah Fant brings some of that, but Arroyo does it with more speed and in a sort of larger range of the field. So I think he's more versatile in terms of the alignments, the personnel you can use him in. I just hope he stays healthy, because if he does, he's a really fun player.
What do you think about the versatility, and that it almost sounded like they had the idea that he could even play an X receiver role?
Those two roles are sort of mushing together. We see it all the time, right? You take a big X receiver and you move him into the slot, and then you have what Nate Tice coined as a power slot, and that's a very common role and skill set in the NFL now. And a lot of those guys, I mean, you look at Oronde Gadsden, right? Oronde Gadsden was that guy on the outside as an X, and he transitioned to tight end for his last couple years at Syracuse, had a ton of success. So we're talking about the same sort of slice of players within the NFL. And yeah, he absolutely could. He's got a lot of those skills. The guy that my team drafted at the top of the draft, Colston Loveland, is the same thing. I think he is a beefed up power slot. He's very good at route running and, catching the ball in short to intermediate areas, keeping running on crossers and stuff like that. And he's just a bigger power slot. He's 255. Right? Some of these power slots are 220, right? It's not that big of a difference. So if you think Elijah Arroyo can shake man coverage in the slot and keep running over smaller defensive backs, yeah, you're going to try and get that matchup, because the NFL is a matchup league.
Smooth of you to just slide in there. That Bears Colson Loveland.
Hey, I gotta put up the stuff that I'm happy about, because I'm not happy about all of it, but I am happy about that one.
I figured you would be. Yeah, that's a good selection for the Bears. If Arroyo, if the knees weren't a concern at all, where would you rank him in terms of how he plays versus Loveland plays?
I would have had him right after Loveland, because I think Loveland is more dynamic, but Arroyo is a little bit bigger right now. Again, Loveland's 21, just turned 21. So he's still got some filling out to do. I think he'll probably play at about 255, maybe 258. He's got the frame to hold it right now. He's about 10 pounds less than that. He's about 244, I think. So Arroyo, I think, is a little bit older, but his frame's more filled out right now. I think he's probably closer to his max. In general, he doesn't have quite the sharpness, the dynamism that Colson Loveland showed, not necessarily last year, but in 2023, certainly when McCarthy was still there, you saw a lot more of it, and he was much more dangerous, but very similar player. I would have had him as a fringe first rounder, very top of the second rounder, and been very comfortable with that. If he had a clean bill of health, he would have been, I think there absolutely would have been certain teams that had him ranked at or above Loveland. So he's that kind of threat. It's really just about sort of dealer's choice and what teams want in their offense in terms of size and what those guys do the best.
Sticking with the pass catchers, they picked up two toward the tail end of the draft, one in round 5 with Torrey Horton from Colorado State and wide receiver Ricky White from UNLV with their final pick in the draft.
Yeah, Horton might be, I love Gray Zabel, but Horton might be my favorite pick in this draft. I love Torrey Horton. Yeah. I love Torrey Horton. He's great. He played quarterback in high school. He can throw it. If you get him out there on the edge, he can really throw it. He's a tall guy. He's a bit lanky, 6'4"-ish, high 180s, but so much demonstrated production. His last 2 full seasons when he wasn't injured, he went over 1,000 yards, both of them. Technically refined pass catcher, really good hands, tough after the catch. I would say a creative yak threat, not really a threat to break tackles with his frame, but can spin out of tackles after the catch, has really good speed on crossing routes. A lot of experience, right? That many catches, you don't get it all on 3 routes. And he ran a bunch of different routes at Colorado State, and he just flew under the radar. Some of it was the injury, maybe some of it's the frame, but like up until a couple months ago, nobody'd mentioned Torrey Horton, and I'd kind of forgotten about him. And I got down into the 20s in terms of, 20th receiver. So I was scouting and I got to Torrey Horton's name, turned on the tape, and I was like, oh my God, I scouted this guy last year. I was thinking that he was going to come out. He didn't. He stayed in school. And I was like, oh, I fell in love all over again. I was like, oh yeah, that happens sometimes. Sometimes you just flush the short term and forget about it. But as you look at the analytics profile, as you look at the physical profile and the tape and all the different skills that he puts together, I love Torrey Horton. I was super thrilled to see that he's going to come play locally. I want to go see him play. He's a great player.
And Clinton knows that I'm always on the lookout for a guy who can play some special teams. And it sounds like, well, shoot, I haven't watched any of his special teams snaps at all. But like you said, just explaining his abilities, it stands out right away. That ability to spin out of tackles, like I can absolutely see that translating to a guy who can be back there on punt returns.
Yeah, no, it can happen. It's always interesting to me. We always think of the little, jitterbug, scat back punt returners, the guys that are like 5'9", 5'10". He's 6'4", and again, not over 200 pounds. So looks a little bit different, but there's a bunch of guys like him in this draft that are 6 foot or over and not, not hulks that do return punts and kicks regularly. It's just a bit of a different body type. And again, they move a little bit differently, but I'd absolutely give him a shot because he's just so skilled, and I'm glad he was healthy enough, but he was so quiet for a guy with 2,000 yard seasons. There's a lot of people that like, oh, well, if he'd played with a better quarterback, he would have had 1,000 yards. You're like, how many yards do you have? 680. And you're like, oh, and he had 1 season of 680. And, he's your 10th receiver. And that happens all the time. And then you're looking at a guy that had 1,100 yards and 1,300 yards or whatever it was. And nope, nobody said his name.
How about Ricky White?
Ricky White's another one that's really fascinating. I loved Ricky White's tape at UNLV, and talk about a special teams guy. Again, if you're going to pick a receiver late, they have to be able to play special teams. Ricky White is a kick blocking machine. I think he blocked 4 or 5 kicks in college as a wide receiver playing special teams. Love that about him, but I really liked his tape. He was very productive as a wide receiver. I was super excited to see him at Shrine Bowl. He had a very sort of not great Shrine Bowl. Didn't see a lot of separation. And I thought, what the heck? Like, that doesn't match up with his tape. Very poor testing at the combine. Didn't run super well. Ran a little bit better at his pro day, but not much. And I just really feel like there's this dip. And I feel like eventually we're going to get one of those posts from his agent about, oh, yeah, by the way, he just had, tightrope surgery or whatever. And you're going to be like, oh, he was playing hurt the whole time, because he didn't look in the sort of run up all-star testing phase of the pre-draft process like I saw him on tape. So they're obviously very familiar with anything that might be going on with him, and taking a bet that he could play special teams right away and maybe work his role into the offense. But if he does, he was a very dangerous receiver at UNLV. I really liked his receiving tape, and I just kept waiting for that guy to pop out during the pre-draft process, and he never did. So I think there's probably something going on there, because it just looked so different than his on-field tape. But really, really skilled receiver who I understand why people cooled on Ricky White. Torrey Horton, not so much.
Well, and Shrine Bowl standouts. I think I told you my Shrine Bowl crush being Will Shepherd, and I feel like he made fun of me a little bit. I think usually we're on similar wavelengths with some of these late round wide receiver guys, but mine went undrafted, so I think maybe I whiffed on that one.
Nah, let's just talk about context. I said, who do you want as an X receiver for the Seahawks? And we were talking about in day 1 or 2. And you said Will Shepherd. And I said, oh, Okay, like you like him a lot more than I do. I think Will Shepherd's a good player, to be fair, but as a sort of extra placement, I was like, well, I'll take Trey Harris, right? Because it was before he'd been
Well,
drafted by
day
the
two.
Chargers.
Okay, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I was like, that's not where I'd put him. But yeah, I think Will Shepherd's a great player. And again, there are a lot of good players that go undrafted, and the Seahawks came in and scooped up a couple of those too.
Any guys before we get to running backs and our fullback? Yeah,
Yeah.
any guys on that UDFA list that kind of piquing your interest?
Yeah, absolutely. Jared Ivey. Everybody was waiting to see where he landed. Nobody really knows. I haven't heard from anybody why he slid. This is I don't just want to say a draftable grade player. This is should have been a highly drafted player. This should have been a leading off day 3 type of player, round 4, round 5. That was consistently where everybody that I talked to had him. That's where I had him. Was if he hadn't gone, he could have slipped into late day 2, the compensatory picks, but I really had him as a strong player to lead off the top 15 picks or so of round 4. I really liked what I saw on tape at Ole Miss. He's got great size. I know he didn't test super well, but he played faster than that. And I didn't really have concerns about his short area speed, his ability to change direction, his power, any of that. I really liked Jared Ivey. I had him was one of my top defensive ends. And then, of course, he just didn't go and didn't go and didn't go. And then you're like, oh, okay, there's something going on. I don't know what the something is yet. Sometimes we find out, sometimes we don't. But the fact that he ends up signing with Seattle is a little bit of a coup. That's basically like getting another 4th round pick for your draft. And we'll see how he works out. But I certainly think Mike Mack knows exactly how to use him. Big, powerful defensive end, can really push the pocket, great long arm move. Yeah, the fact that, and he took a little while to pick his destination too. He wasn't one of those guys that was announced like 2 hours after the draft. And then Zy Alexander, the cornerback from LSU, again, a little bit like Torrey Horton on defense, tall, skinny, makes tons of plays on the ball, SEC experience corner. I'm not sure why he slid. I think, again, he was definitely a 4th, 5th round eligible player. If he hadn't gone, by the time we got through the 6th round and he hadn't gotten taken, he was one of the guys I was kind of looking back on the live stream and like, where'd Zy Alexander go? It's like, no, he's still there. I was like, okay. And a couple of his teammates slipped as well. But very talented player who I would say has eventual starting chops. And again, doesn't have to in Seattle. He's going to have to make his name on special teams because the defensive back roster for Seattle is pretty loaded, but that doesn't mean you don't go get a talented guy if you can.
Well, going to running backs, I know because even in the 7th round, EJ, because of your affinity for the running back spot, I know you had to have looked at Damian Martinez out of Miami.
Yeah, and I didn't have him anywhere near that range. This is a guy that I had much higher up in my running back rankings because he's an absolute bulldozer as a running back. And the first time I did my study on him, that's kind of what I came away with, was this is a power back who can play power football. There are guys that try and be power backs that can't, but that's not Damian Martinez. He is an absolute hammer running the football, can break a lot of tackles with physicality. Some guys break them with moves or speed. He is really a physical tackle breaker, good contact balance and all that. What I missed on my first pass that I got on my recheck was he's got more burst than I thought he did after he breaks those tackles. It's not necessarily long speed. So this is kind of the difference between quick and fast, but he accelerates after he breaks those tackles in a way that's really hard to deal with because he's just broken contact. Again, you had a defender sort of slotted to take that spot in the defense. He defeated him. And then there's this little burst over 3 to 5 yards after he breaks loose that makes him really difficult to deal with because he changes a bunch of angles. And yeah, he hits his top gear pretty quickly and sort of tops out, runs out of speed. He's not an absolute speed demon, but just that little burst after, doing something unexpected like breaking a tackle makes him really, really hard to deal with. And then the next defender that gets to him still has to deal with that size and physicality.
Oh, we've got Dana saying a hint of beast mode. And if I were to say of anything, if they were going to go into this draft and try and find something in the run game that they really don't have, like Ken Walker isn't necessarily running through guys. Zach Charbonnet, even though he has that physical size, he's not a guy that you hand the ball to in those short yardage situations. They really missed that last year of having that capability. Kenny McIntosh, not necessarily that guy either. So if they can find a guy that can even fill that role, as a running back and be that short yardage guy, then it's something that they're missing.
Yeah, absolutely. And Damian Martinez was my 9th rated running back in this class. And again, this very deep running
Right.
back class
Wow.
rated 9th. So again, was slipping. I knew why he was slipping. It's it's off the field concerns and there's like character issues and then there's just maturity issues. With him, it's maturity. It's not
Mm.
anything illegal or anything. It's, sometimes when you're 18, 19 years old, you don't make the best decisions. And there's definitely some of that. It's why he transferred. He was originally at Oregon State, ended up transferring to Miami. Had a pretty good run at Miami, absolutely, this year, and is much more talented than where he's picked. It wasn't a reflection of his tape as to where he was picked. It was, making sure that you were comfortable with the kid and getting him in your building and getting him straight. But in terms of talent, very, very talented running back. And it definitely gives me a little bit of question about how they're going to approach Kenneth Walker's final year.
Well, there's been some questions about will K9 maybe get traded, that sort of thing. Do you see him potentially taking over one of these running back spots?
Well, I think it gives, again, Seattle flexibility, and that's been the sort of theme of this whole draft, right? Is that Zabel gives them some flexibility. You can play guard, you can play center. Eamon gives them flexibility. It wasn't a needed selection, and they can work him in packages. Milrow might give them quarterback flexibility. Martinez gives them flexibility at the running back spot. Now, if you don't think you're going to pay Walker and you want to get something for him in the final year of his deal, you already know that Charbonnet played very well in relief. He was a very solid option. And now you drafted, I would say, got a guy who was, underdrafted, should have been drafted sooner. Let's just say that, was a greater value than where he was
Well,
picked. And you weren't
McIntosh was
sure you
kind
were
of
going to be able to do that.
yeah,
And
McIntosh
you
was kind of
did. And now you're not necessarily set, but it gives you some flexibility because if somebody comes and says, hey, we'll give you this for K-Walk, whereas you wouldn't necessarily have considered that before. Now you go, hey, we got the young guy, we've got an established veteran, Charbonnet. Like we could do this and we'd be okay and we'd get something back as opposed to just letting K-Walk walk in free agency, if that's what you think you're going to do.
Well, another guy on the roster too that I know that you had a little bit of interest in when we talked last year was George Holani, and that's even someone that I think you're competing with that player too. If you're Martinez, then trying to get some of those bottom end of the line snaps, and yeah, if you have that power back capability, I think it does give you a leg up on maybe some of those other guys.
Yeah, I like Kalani a lot, but Martinez is a better player if we're just talking about straight up on the field. So that means again, it's the old Seahawks mantra, right? Competition every day, competition at every position. And if you've got them, and then you've got pass receiving options at McIntosh and whatever, somebody comes and says, "I'll give you whatever for K-Walk." You're in a spot where you can say, "Sure, that's not going to hurt our football team, and we'll get an asset on an expiring contract." If they're worried about his injury history or his availability or anything else, they'll let him go. And if not, sure, they can keep him, exercise him, pay him big money because you're going to have to as a number one who's got speed and game breaking ability. But if they, again, want to reshuffle those assets and put them somewhere else, they put themselves in a position where they can do that without really taking a huge step down because you've got a full and varied running back room.
Got Stuart S in the chat saying Martinez in the 7th just illustrated how great this draft was. How great was it that they were able to draft some competition, EJ, for the newly announced fullback Brady Russell? They go out and they get fullback Robbie Oots, tight end from Alabama.
I'm very glad that they're playing him at fullback. Let's be 100% clear about that. They drafted him and I was like, oh, and then somebody was like, they announced they're playing him as a fullback. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. I like that better. Not a great true tight end, I think. Has some abilities at fullback that can make him really interesting. And again, great competition, insulates you against injury.
That they called out in the post combine or the post draft press conference.
Yeah. So it's better. I like that. It's funny. You hear about landing spots, whether it's, skill set and coaching sort of scheme mix, or whether it's like crowded depth chart. You're like, they picked another receiver. They have 8. What are they going to do with that guy? And then occasionally it's like this, where it's like, I don't think that's great. And they're like, no, they're going to do something else with him. And you're like, oh, okay, cool. I like that. Good for him.
Well, if anything, if nothing else, EJ, it balances out the mustache drafting within the draft, because Gray Zabel, Robbie Oots, they both
strong mustache game from Gray Zabel for sure.
For guys coming out of college, well, it's somewhat strong.
Come on, I got nothing. I can't compete.
He's EJ Snyder of Bootleg Football. EJ, I know you guys did 3 days of full coverage of the draft, including a day 3. Gosh, I think you had over 5,000 people tune in, at least 5,000 at one time watching. An incredible day for Bootleg Football.
Yeah, an incredible draft. The support has always been tremendous for our work with the draft, but this year was really off the charts. We set single stream records for concurrency, which is what you're talking about. Our day 1 record previously was about 5,100. This year we hit 58. And within 3 days, with all 3 streams, we had over 250,000 people watch our draft coverage, which is staggering to me. And to look up on day 3, well into the 6th round, and see 4,500 people hanging out with us for what used to be, 600 or 700 people or 1,300 people in our first couple of years on day 3, when everybody was like, I'll go mow the lawn, is a staggering amount of support. We feel it. We see it. We're incredibly thankful for it. And we have a lot of fun doing it.
Well, be sure and check them out. They're over on Patreon, Bootleg Football. You can check them out, patreon.com. If you want to help support the show, you can do it that way. You can support our show over there at getintheflock.com. And we've got Pork Adobo coming in as a new YouTube member. So welcome to the flock to Pork Adobo. I have a feeling that may not be, his given name.
I don't know. If it is, he's a popular kid in school. Like, what'd you bring for lunch, man?
Probably the most popular kid around lunchtime. So, EJ Snyder, a big thanks to you. Thanks for coming on and breaking down our Seahawks draft. And I think with that, there's only one thing left to say: go Hawks.